Hello YouTube family, thanks for joining me on this video. And in this video, as you can see to my left with a graphic there, we are going to be discussing Confederate monuments. I believe I've talked about Confederate monuments and the idiocy of Confederate monuments in a previous video. I want to go a little bit more on them because, right now what we have is the argument in Congress. They're trying to remove Confederate monuments from Confederate statues from Congress. I did not realize until this fight began that we had Confederate statues in Congress, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense to put up statues in Congress of the people who were trying to overthrow the government. The people who are actually actively engaged in a military coup. And most Confederate monuments, these various statues, I guarantee you, most of the people who support them could not tell you who is on that horse. Could not tell you who that statue is. You know, I mean, they make a big deal of the whole statue thing, but I guarantee you most of the people could not tell you who that was of. They might say Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, whatever famous Confederate they can think of. May or may not be true. Given any, statue, any given statue. This statue, for instance, says, "I never really got over my circumcision. I'm shocked to this day." This is Nathan Bedford Forrest, the weird, crazy statue that somebody overpaid for to have that guy ingrained in a statue, to have him elevated in our society by having a statue of him put up. But it makes no sense. I'm not a fan of statues, period. Confederate statues, certainly I'm not a fan of. And let's go through some of the stats. There was a large swell in Confederate monuments being put up between 1905 and 1914. Most of the Confederate monuments were erected between 1900 and 1920. It was not like people in the South were putting up Confederate statues in the 1870s after the Civil War ended. The period that most of these statues were put up was between 1900 and 1920. That's where the vast majority of Confederate statues were erected, when they were erected. This was a period when certain groups were trying to rebrand the Confederacy. Among those was the UDC, the United Daughters of the Confederacy. They were a part of a movement that's called the Lost Cause of the Confederacy. You had groups like the United Daughters of the Confederacy, who are descendants of Confederate leaders, whether military or civilian. You had some of the still living former Confederate soldiers, former Confederate officers, former Confederate political leaders, who in the later years of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century were trying to do this rebrand of the Confederacy. They were trying to whitewash, literally, what the Confederacy was, what they stood for, what they were fighting for. The reason why, if you see people get polled over what the Civil War was fought over, most of them will say states' rights. That whole putting in the word states' rights for what the Civil War was fought over comes from this lost cause of the Confederacy, where they were trying to muddy the waters about who Confederates were, what they were fighting for. And I mean, the states' rights answer is a non-answer. I mean, it's what are you saying? What states' rights were we fighting over exactly, in your mind? I mean, the Civil War was fought over slavery. The people who participated on the Confederate side in the Civil War made it very clear they wanted to continue to own people. It wasn't muddied at the time it was happening. After it was over, and we went through Reconstruction, and we were trying to heal and all this, that's when you got people trying to rebrand who the Confederates were. That's why you have people that believe that Robert E. Lee was opposed to slavery himself, but he was a Southerner, so he fought for the Confederates. No, Robert E. Lee was a very brutal slave owner who owned a very large number of slaves. He was very much a racist bastard who fought for the Confederacy. The vast majority of Confederate monuments were constructed when black citizens' rights were also under attack, when black organizers were trying to fight for equal rights, and also when there was a resurgence of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. When you had a resurgence of these hate groups, you got more Confederate monuments going up. I mean, some of these Confederate monuments were actually, the keynote address at their unveiling was given by a KKK leader. There was an increase in schools being named after Confederates during the Civil Rights era from 1960 to 1965. The purpose of these Confederate monuments was to remind black people who's in charge. That's why they were erected. They were erected because you had the black community fighting for rights, and you had the racist white community wanting to thumb their nose at them, basically, with putting these statues up. But let's go look at a couple of stat sheets. That's always fun. This is when all of the monuments were erected. You can see it right here in front of you. And between 1900 and 1920, you have the vast majority of the statues being erected. The link to this website will be in the source data below the video, so if you want to go and click through and look at the various dates yourselves, that's fine with me. I just captured the graphic to have it available here so you can easily see. These Confederate monuments were not erected immediately in the aftermath of the Civil War. They were erected for another reason altogether. And here we have a second data sheet. Which shows different time periods. The KKK was founded in 1865. The United Daughters of the Confederacy were established in 1894. And you can see as where the statues were constructed in response to these different things. 1909, the NAACP was founded, and there was a massive building of Confederate monuments in response. The thing is, these monuments were constructed for a reason. And it was to continue oppressing a certain demographic in America. That's what it was. But let's go through a couple of videos here.
In 2010, Rocky Mount spent more than $60,000 to rebuild this Confederate statue, saying it's central to their identity.
I feel hurt. It's a symbol of hate. It lets me know that my county hates me. When we go to the courthouse, we don't feel justice. I feel like I'm going to a slaughterhouse.
Boonsville for the second time, she had another encounter with white customers who were there at the same time.
They had a black statue with red lips eating a watermelon. I want to talk to them. You want to talk? Hey. Okay. No, because I wanted to say something to them because they did that on purpose. And that's the type of conversation I want to have. I want to have conversation with Trump supporters that feel the need to yell out, "Vote Trump," when they see me.
And so there you have Bridget Craighead, who was trying to mobilize in her own community. Has this unique situation where she was born in a predominantly white right-wing area where she's constantly being berated over being black. That's it. You know, this town, which I will guess doesn't have a tremendous amount of money for their budget, chose to spend a significant amount of money building a Confederate statue in town. And the reason for the statue is not history, it's to thumb their nose in the face of people like Bridget. That's why it was made. And this is very much about race. As you noticed, as she was at that store that sold the figurines, the different sculptures, and she was addressing the fact that one of the sculptures they had was a black person with very big red lips eating a watermelon, a very racist statue. She was wanting to inquire to the owners why they would sell such a racist statue. And then there was the guy out front that yelled out, "Vote Trump." And so for those of you who are Trump supporters, who are right-wing, who are Republican voters, whatever, who try to say it's not about race, I'm sorry. But when you've got somebody out front yelling, "Vote Trump," just because they see a black woman talking to a reporter, that tells you it's all about race. Race has a very large amount to do with it. And I want to go more into the idiocy of the monuments, but there's one more video I found I wanted to play for this video. And this is a neo-Nazi.
Sign that hate lives here. Are you a neo-Nazi?
Do I embrace it? I don't try to push it away.
Well, you're wearing a swastika on your shirt.
Exactly.
And you've got swastika flags. Why the flags? Why the shirt? Why these hateful symbols in this town?
I don't think they're hateful. I think it's an ideology that has been completely misinterpreted since the Third Reich.
Okay, now I've got to stop you.
I'm a Holocaust denier.
Misinterpreted. 6 million Jews were killed.
You'll never sell me on that.
I'm not trying to sell you.
Yeah.
It is reality. It's history. It cannot be denied. Daniel Burnside is a lightning rod of discord in Ulysses, Pennsylvania. Population 690. With the help of the internet, his message has spread far and wide, giving his town attention it does not want.
Rural America spoke up when they elected Trump. Rural America.
And by rural America, he means white America.
We're staring down the barrel of a gun here in white America. There's still 193 million white Americans. Yes, the vast majority of them are in their 60s and 70s, will be in the ground in the next 20 years, and therefore we have the possibility of becoming a minority in our own country. A possibility.
It sounds to me
of becoming a minority in our own country.
Like you're afraid of being me. And being me...
This is my country.
...is great. This is also my country.
You guys didn't win the culture war.
He invited us on his property to talk, but when he doesn't like our conversation, he explodes.
Get the out of here!
And that was a neo-Nazi that the media had talked to, who expressed how he was emboldened by Donald Trump's election. And, of course he was. I mean, Donald Trump used very racist, bigoted rhetoric in running. And he got a lot of people who were disenchanted with voting to show up and start voting for him, and that's why his voting totals are rather good. The number of people that showed up to vote for him. because he is emboldening the racists of this country, the racist side of America. He's making people feel like it's okay to be racist, openly racist again. And that's what you're seeing a lot of hate towards the black community, the Jewish community, the Asian community. And one of the things we need to do, besides just stop putting people up on a pedestal to begin with, but certainly Confederates. Let's go into the Confederate monument thing. As I've said before, I don't agree with making statues of people. We're all flawed. I'm flawed, you're flawed. None of us, I believe, rise to the level of having a statue made of us. We all fall short of that somewhere. And certainly these people, the Confederates. You have people that will argue that getting rid of Confederate monuments is trying to destroy history. To which I would say, if there's a monument of Robert E. Lee standing today and it's removed, tomorrow do you forget he existed? In 10 years, do you forget that he existed? It has nothing to do with history. Because we don't record history with statues. We record history with books, with museums. I mean, let's face it. If you took your 5-year-old child to look at a statue of Robert E. Lee, of Stonewall Jackson, whoever, Nathan Bedford Forrest, just because you wanted to scare your kid to death. If you took your child to look at a statue of Robert E. Lee, what is your child going to know about the Confederacy, the Civil War, what is he going to learn about any of that? Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. All he will know is that there was, if you tell him Robert E. Lee's name's not on the statue, and you tell him it's the guy's name, or if his name's on the statue, the kid will know that for some reason we venerate this guy named Robert E. Lee. That's all he's going to learn from a statue, is veneration. However, if you take your child to a U.S. History Museum and he sees an exhibit of Robert E. Lee that includes the kind of things you will see in a museum, which includes information about Robert E. Lee, who he was as a general, who he was as a Virginian, who he was as a Southerner, who he was with the Confederacy, your child will learn a great deal about who Robert E. Lee was. And so I would say, if you want to make a statue of someone, some historic figure, then make it and put it in a museum. It makes no sense to venerate the Confederacy. And let's go further into that. The Confederates were either traitors or foreign government operators. And I'll explain that by saying, and I got into a debate with one of my coworkers about this. My coworker, as I tried to draw information out of him on what he was thinking, because he was very staunchly supportive of Confederate monuments. And I asked him a simple question: was secession legal? His thought was that secession was legal. As I told him, and I will tell you now, as we know, it's not legal. The Supreme Court ruled in 1869 that secession was not legal. Therefore, the secession of the southern states wasn't legal. However, if you're one of those people that think, well, it should be legal. That's my coworker. His thing was, well, they made the wrong decision. It doesn't matter if you think they made the wrong decision. That's not how law works in this country. But if you believe that secession is legal, then what the Confederate States did was they formed a separate foreign government. Then they attacked the United States government. Why would we venerate those people? That would be like putting a statue of Hitler up in the Capitol building. That would make no sense. Hitler also was an operative for a foreign government, that engaged in war against America. He didn't necessarily attack America. He attacked our allies, and we, therefore, after Pearl Harbor, ended up getting fully into the war and attacked him. But he was a foreign actor who was engaged in war against America. Robert E. Lee was a foreign actor. If you believe secession is legal, then Robert E. Lee was a foreign actor who engaged militarily against the United States of America. Therefore, why put a statue of him up? However, as I said, because the Supreme Court ruled in 1869 that secession was unconstitutional, it is therefore illegal. It was a court case in Texas where, in order for them to determine the court case, they didn't know whether secession was legal or not, so that's why it rose to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court made their decision that secession was not constitutional because one of the goals of this country, of our document, is to form a more perfect union. And as they put it, you can't form a more perfect union if member states have the ability to willy-nilly just leave. And so now that we know that secession is not legal, then what the Confederate States did was just simple treason. They committed treason against the United States of America. And why would you put a traitor up in a position of veneration as far as making a statue of him? Why would you put a statue of him in the Capitol building? Why would you put a traitor statue in the Capitol? So that's the thing. You have two ways you go. Either you believe secession was illegal and you're wrong, and you're putting up and venerating people who were foreign actors engaged in war against the United States, or you're venerating traitors. That's it. And I mean, nowadays, right now, in modern politics, you may have Ashley Babbitt, the former Air Force lady that got shot and killed during the Capitol riots when she tried to crawl through a window into the speaker's lobby. You probably have some Republicans on the right that would like to see a statue of her put up. Why? Why would you? Why would you venerate her? I mean, I know right now it's political, it's performative to do that, or to speak favorably of that. But it makes no sense. As far as the Confederate statues, they've never made sense because the Confederates were traitors. What we are doing is putting up monuments of traitors to appease the fragile white ego of racist Southerners. That's it. That's it. That's all putting up these statues is. And even if you disagree with the Supreme Court and believe that secession should be legal, then we would be putting up statues of foreign actors, members of a foreign government who attacked the United States. Either way, it makes no sense. It makes no sense no matter what perspective you come at it from. To put up statues of a traitor or to put up statues of foreign actors who engaged in war against the United States makes no sense. And that's why we should have none. No statues of Confederates. And I understand there are some ignorant people out there. There are statues that exist in northern states of abolitionists who, in some cases, fought and died trying to get freedom for slaves who have had their statues desecrated. That's why we don't need statues. Because individually we're not intelligent enough to look at somebody dressed in some colonial attire and realize who they are. Because statues don't say anything other than here's somebody dressed from a particular time period. That's all people see. Because statues don't tell you anything about history. They don't tell you anything about the person. It's just venerating somebody. And I mean, even the abolitionists, I'm sure they fell short in some ways of being worthy of statue making, being venerated in a statue. But, and people will use that, the fact that people will attack statues of abolitionists to mock the whole idea of removing statues. That's that's completely changing the topic. That's ignorance overall rather than ignorance in a specific area. But there's no reason whatsoever to have Confederate monuments for anyone in the Confederacy, because they were, we know, because we were all, everybody watching this video was born after 1869. We know they were traitors because secession was illegal. The Confederates are traitors to the United States of America who engaged in war as traitors. We should not have statues of them up. Just like we shouldn't have statues of Hitler or anybody else that we've engaged in war against. And the thing is, we don't have statues of Hitler up. However, we do have statues of these goofballs up for no reason whatsoever. At least not any reason that makes sense. And it's guys like this neo-Nazi who get mad about it, who decorate their house with racist propaganda, who is trying to tell this black woman who's interviewing him that she lost the culture war. Oh, I realize the right wing, all they care about is the culture war right now. The culture war in no way substantively improves our lives, in no way substantively improves the country. The culture war is doing nothing but allowing these racists to sit around and revel in their racism. So, as far as Confederate monuments, they should not exist. I don't believe monuments should exist, period. Except for, like, you can put up a monument for the Vietnam War, for World War II. Not for specific people, but just to honor the courage of people who engaged in combat. Because, let's face it, it's not the wealthy politicians who engage in this. It's the rabble. It's those of us normal working Americans who have to go and fight and die in these wars. The Vietnam War, not such a great war, built off a lie. World War II, however, was trying to stop fascism. Another odd irony in the right wing's hatred cycle, that the right wing hates anti-fascist Antifa, but they would very much say that they support the fighting of Hitler, which was being anti-fascist Antifa. But there you have it. My take on the Confederate monuments. They should all be brought down. And I mean, if you want to put them in a museum, that's fine. If you want to put them in a history museum with some appropriate setup in the museum to talk about the Civil War, people and the various leaders, military and political leaders in the Civil War, that's fine. Otherwise, they should become brought down as gravel. Thanks for watching. If you like my videos, please give me a like. Please hit the subscribe button, and by all means, have a good day.